Jake Morrison walked through the busy halls of Nexus Prime, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. The space station was huge, bigger than any city he had ever seen on Earth. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved around him. Some had blue skin and forearms, others looked like giant insects with shiny shells. A few were so strange that Jake couldn't figure out what they were supposed to be. He checked his watch. The meeting with Ambassador Velter was in 20 minutes. Jake felt nervous. This was his first time dealing with such an important alien leader. The Zealothian ambassador had requested this meeting himself, which was unusual. Most aliens barely noticed human traders like Jake. The Liberty's Dawn was a small cargo ship. Nothing special. Jake and his crew moved goods between human colonies and alien worlds. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills. His sister Emma always said he should aim higher, maybe join the Earth Diplomatic Service. But Jake liked the simple life of a trader. As he walked, Jake noticed more security guards than usual. The tall, gray-skinned Manthari guards stood at every corner, their 6 eyes watching everything. Something was happening on Nexus Prime, but Jake didn't know what. He found the right section and took the elevator up to the diplomatic level. The halls here were fancier, with smooth walls and soft lighting. Jake felt out of place in his simple trader clothes. The other people here wore expensive robes and carried themselves like they owned the galaxy. Jake stopped outside Ambassador Velter's office. He pressed the door chime and waited. A voice came through the speaker, speaking in the clicking language of the Zealothians. Jake didn't understand it, but the translation device on his belt turned it into English. "Come in, Captain Morrison." The door slid open. Jake stepped inside and saw Ambassador Velter behind a large desk. The Zealothian was tall and thin, with pale green skin and large black eyes. His long fingers moved across a holographic display as he worked. "Please sit," Velter said without looking up. His voice was soft and musical, like wind through trees. Jake sat in the chair across from the desk. He waited while the ambassador finished his work. Finally, Velter looked at him. "Captain Morrison, I asked you here because I need your help." Jake was surprised. "My help? I'm just a cargo hauler, Ambassador. What could I possibly help you with?" Velter leaned forward. "Because you are human, and humans see things differently than we do. I have been watching your species for some time. You have a quality that most of us have lost." "What quality is that?" "Courage. The willingness to do what is right, even when it is dangerous." Jake shifted in his chair. "Ambassador, I'm not sure what you're getting at." Velter stood and walked to the window. Outside, Jake could see the busy docks of Nexus Prime. Ships from 100 worlds loaded and unloaded cargo. "There are people on this station who want me dead," Velter said quietly. "They believe I'm making a mistake, trusting humans too much. They think your species is dangerous. Are we?" Jake asked. "Perhaps, but dangerous can also mean powerful. I believe humans will change this galaxy, Captain Morrison. The question is whether that change will be for better or worse." Jake stood up. "Ambassador, if someone is planning to hurt you, you need to call security. The Manthari guards can protect you." Velter turned around, his black eyes sad. "Some of the guards may be involved. I don't know who to trust anymore." "Then call your own people. Contact the Zealothian fleet." "I cannot. The conspiracy may reach all the way to my homeworld." Velter walked back to his desk. "Captain Morrison, I am going to die soon. I have accepted this. But before I do, I need someone to carry a message to Earth." Jake felt cold. "What message?" "That not all aliens see humans as enemies. That some of us believe in your potential. That what happens next will determine the future of both our species." Before Jake could respond, an alarm started ringing. Red lights flashed in the corridor. Outside, through the office window, Jake saw security guards running toward the diplomatic section. "They are coming," Velter said calmly. He handed Jake a small data chip. "Take this to your Earth government. Tell them that Velter died believing in humanity." "Ambassador, we need to get you out of here." "No, Captain. If I run, they will hunt me across the galaxy. If I stay, perhaps my death will mean something." The office door exploded inward. Armed Zealothian soldiers poured into the room. Jake recognized that leader immediately. It was Zolkar, Velter's own assistant. "Ambassador Velter, you are under arrest for treason against the Zealothian Empire," Zolkar announced. "What treason?" Jake demanded. "This man has done nothing wrong." Zolkar's cold eyes turned to Jake. "And what is a human doing here?" "Guards, arrest this alien as well." "Wait," Velter said. Captain Morrison is not involved in this. Let him go. I think not. Zolkar smiled, showing sharp teeth. A human and a traitor. Meeting in secret. This looks very suspicious. The guards grabbed Jake's arms. He tried to resist, but there were too many of them. As they dragged him away, he saw Zolkar pull out a long knife. No, Jake shouted, but it was too late. Zolkar drove the blade into Velter's chest. The ambassador fell to the floor, green blood spreading across his robes. With his last breath, he whispered something in his own language. Jake fought harder against the guards, but they hit him with a stun weapon. As consciousness faded, he heard Zolkar giving orders. Prepare the evidence. Make it look like the human killed the ambassador. The Galactic Council will want to see that humans cannot be trusted. Jake's world went dark, but not before he realized the terrible truth. This had all been planned. Velter had been murdered by his own people, and Jake was going to take the blame. The ambassador had been right about one thing. What happened next would determine the future of both their species. And right now, that future looked very dark. Indeed. Jake woke up in a cold metal cell. His head hurt from the stun weapon, and his mouth tasted like copper. The walls were smooth and gray, with no windows. A single light in the ceiling cast harsh shadows everywhere. He sat up slowly, trying to remember what had happened. Then it all came back. Ambassador Velter was dead, murdered by his own assistant, and Jake was being blamed for it. The cell door made a clicking sound. It slid open, and Demanthary guards walked in. Behind them came a tall Zealothian in official robes. Jake recognized him from the news broadcasts. It was High Judge Murdoch, one of the most powerful aliens in the Galactic Council. Captain Morrison, the judge said in perfect English, "You are in serious trouble." Jake stood up. "I didn't kill the ambassador. Zolkar did it. I saw him." "That is not what the evidence shows." Murdoch held up a data pad. "Your DNA was found all over the ambassador's office. The security cameras recorded you entering and leaving. 3 witnesses saw you arguing with Velter earlier that day. That's impossible. I was only in his office for a few minutes, and we never argued. The evidence does not lie. Human, you killed Ambassador Velter in cold blood." Jake felt panic rising in his chest. "You have to listen to me. There's a conspiracy. Zolkar is working with others to frame me. They want to make humans look bad." Murdoch's expression didn't change. "Humans do not need help looking bad. Captain, your species has a history of violence. This crime proves that humans cannot be trusted in civilized society." "What about a lawyer? Don't I get to defend myself?" "You will have a trial," Murdoch said. "It begins in 2 hours." Jake's mouth fell open. 2 hours? That's not enough time to prepare a defense. The evidence is clear. The trial is just a formality. The judge turned to leave, then stopped. "Captain, I suggest you use this time to prepare your final words. The penalty for murdering a Galactic Council member is death." After they left, Jake sat down on the hard bench. His hands were shaking. Everything was happening too fast. In 2 hours, he would be on trial for his life, and he had no way to prove his innocence. He thought about his sister Emma, probably worried sick about him. He thought about his crew, waiting for him to return to the ship. They would never know what really happened. The trial was held in the main assembly hall of Nexus Prime. Jake was brought in wearing chains, flanked by guards. The room was huge, with seats for thousands of spectators. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the galleries, all watching him with hostile eyes. The judge's bench was raised high above the floor. High Judge Murdoch sat in the center, with 2 other judges on either side. They looked down at Jake like he was some kind of dangerous animal. "The trial of Captain Jake Morrison begins now," Murdoch announced. His voice echoed through the hall. "The defendant is charged with the murder of Ambassador Velter of the Zealothian Empire." A prosecutor stood up. She was a Zealothian female with silver skin and red eyes. "Honored judges, the evidence against the defendant is overwhelming. We will show that Captain Morrison killed Ambassador Velter in a fit of human rage." She activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above the courtroom. Jake saw himself entering Velter's office. The timestamp showed the exact moment he had arrived for their meeting. The defendant met with the ambassador at 1500 hours. The prosecutor continued. 30 minutes later, Ambassador Velter was found dead. The defendant's DNA was everywhere. His fingerprints were on the murder weapon. Jake wanted to shout that it was all lies, but the guards had warned him to stay quiet. He looked around. The courtroom, hoping to see a friendly face. In the back, he spotted someone he recognized. It was Lisa Clark, Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. She looked worried and angry. The prosecutor showed more evidence. Security footage of Jake walking through the station. Audio recordings of him asking for directions to the diplomatic level. Everything painted him as a calculating killer who had planned the murder in advance. The defendant is a human, the prosecutor said, her voice full of disgust. Humans are a violent species. They solve problems with force. Ambassador Velter was working to give humans more rights. In the galaxy, perhaps Captain Morrison disagreed. With this policy, finally, it was time for Jake's defense. He didn't have a lawyer, so he had to speak for himself. He stood up, his chains rattling. Honored judges, I am innocent. Ambassador Velter asked me to meet with him. He was trying to warn me about a conspiracy. He knew someone wanted to kill him. Do you have proof of this conspiracy? Judge Murdoch asked. Zolkar, the ambassador's assistant, is the real killer. I saw him stab Velter with my own eyes. The prosecutor laughed. Zolkar is a respected member of the Zealothian diplomatic corps. Why would he kill his own superior? I don't know why. Jake admitted, but I know what I saw. You saw what? You wanted to see, Murdoch said coldly. Humans often blame others for their own crimes. The trial lasted only 1 hour. The judges didn't even leave the room to discuss their verdict. They whispered among themselves for a few minutes. Then, Murdoch stood up. Captain Jake Morrison, this court finds you guilty of murder in the 1st degree. You are sentenced to death by public execution. The crowd in the gallery cheered. Jake felt his legs go weak. He had expected this, but hearing the word still hit him like a physical blow. The execution will take place in 3 days. Murdoch continued. It will be broadcast across the galaxy, so all species can see what happens to those who threaten the peace. As the guards dragged him away, Jake saw Ambassador Clark trying to push through the crowd. She was shouting something, but he couldn't hear her over the noise. Other humans in the gallery were crying or screaming in protest. Back in his cell, Jake sat in the darkness and thought about his life. 28 years old, and it was almost over. He had never gotten married, never had children. His biggest adventure had been flying cargo ships between planets. Now he was going to die for a crime he didn't commit, and there was nothing he could do about it. But as he sat there, Jake remembered Ambassador Velter's last words. The ambassador had believed in humanity's potential. He had died trying to help humans find their place in the galaxy. Maybe Jake's death would serve a purpose too. Maybe it would show other humans what they were really up against. Maybe it would make them stronger, more united. 3 days later, they came for him. The guards unlocked his cell and led him through the corridors of Nexus Prime. Aliens lined the hallways, some jeering, others just staring. Jake kept his head up and walked with dignity. The execution platform was in the main plaza, surrounded by millions of spectators. Camera drones flew overhead, broadcasting the event to every corner of the galaxy. Jake could see the huge screen showing his face to the crowd. High Judge Murdoch read the charges one more time. Jake barely heard the words. He was thinking about Earth, about blue skies and green grass. He was thinking about Emma, and how proud she had always been of her big brother. Captain Morrison, Murdoch said, "Do you have any final words?" Jake looked out at the crowd. Billions of beings across the galaxy were watching him. This was his chance to say something that mattered. "I die innocent of this crime," he said, his voice carrying across the plaza. "But I don't die for nothing. Humanity will remember this day, and the universe will know what justice looks like when we're the ones giving it out." The executioner raised his weapon. Jake closed his eyes and thought about home. Then everything went dark. But even as Jake Morrison's life ended, something strange began to happen in the depths of space. Far away, around distant stars, something was stirring. The universe itself had been watching, and it was not pleased with what it had seen. Dr. Helen Carter was having her morning coffee when the alert started flashing on her computer screen. She worked at the Solar Observatory on Luna, Earth's moon, where she spent her days watching the stars. It was usually quiet work, but today, something was very wrong. The first message came from the Centauri station. Solar output down to percent. Cause unknown. Helen frowned. To percent was a big change for a star. Stars didn't just suddenly get dimmer without a reason. She pulled up the data from Alpha Centauri and saw the readings for herself. The star's brightness had indeed dropped. starting exactly 12 hours ago. That was strange timing. 12 hours ago was when Jake Morrison had been executed on Nexus Prime. Helen had watched the broadcast like billions of other humans. She had cried when they killed the innocent man, but she never thought it would have anything to do with her work. More messages kept coming in. Vegan Observatory reported that their star was also dimming. Then came reports from the Wolf System, from Tau Ceti, from dozens of other human colonies. Every single one showed the same pattern. The stars were getting dimmer. Helen called her boss, Director Sam Rodriguez. Sam, we have a problem. Multiple stars are showing unusual behavior. What kind of behavior? Sam asked. They're dimming, all at the same time. It started 12 hours ago. There was silence on the other end. Finally, Sam spoke. Helen, that's impossible. Stars don't coordinate with each other. They're separated by light years. I know it's impossible. What is happening anyway? Within hours, Helen's small office was filled with scientists from around the solar system. They had all seen the same readings. Dr. Chen from Mars, Dr. Brown from the asteroid belt, Dr. Green from Jupiter Station. Everyone was talking at once, trying to figure out what was going on. Maybe it's a measurement error, Dr. Chen suggested. All our instruments could be malfunctioning. 50 different observatories with 50 different types of equipment. Helen shook her head. That's even more impossible than coordinated stellar dimming. Dr. Brown was studying a star chart on the wall. Look at this pattern. The dimming started in systems closest to human colonies. Then it spread outward. Spread how? Dr. Green asked. Nothing can travel faster than light. I don't know, but look at the timing. The effect is moving from star to star in a pattern. That follows human exploration routes. Helen felt a chill run down her spine. Show me the timeline again. Dr. Brown pulled up a holographic display. It showed the galaxy with human colonies marked in blue. Red dots appeared where stars had started dimming. The pattern was clear. It began with Sol, Earth's sun, then moved to Alpha Centauri, then to the other nearby systems where humans lived. It's following us, Helen whispered. The dimming is following human settlement patterns. That's crazy, Dr. Chen said. Stars don't care about human colonies. Then explain this. Helen pointed to the display. Every single star that's dimming has been visited by human ships. Every single one. The room fell silent. They all stared at the holographic galaxy, watching as more red dots appeared. The pattern was undeniable. Helen's phone rang. It was her sister Emma, calling from Nexus Prime. Emma was Jake Morrison's sister, and she had been trying to prove his innocence. Helen, I need your help, Emma said. Her voice sounded strange, like she had been crying. Emma, what's wrong? Something's happening to the stars. The aliens are panicking. They say it started right after Jake was executed. Helen's blood ran cold. Emma, where are you right now? I'm still on Nexus Prime. The aliens won't let human ships leave. They think we're doing something to their stars. Are you safe for now? But Helen, they're scared. I've never seen aliens scared before. They're blaming us for whatever's happening. Helen looked at her colleagues. They were all listening to the conversation. Emma, listen to me carefully. The star dimming isn't something we're doing. It's something that's happening to us, or maybe because of us. What do you mean? I mean the universe itself might be responding to Jake's death. Emma was quiet for a moment. That sounds impossible. Everything about this is impossible. But it's happening anyway. Over the next 2 days, the stellar dimming spread to over 1,000 star systems. The effect was now visible to the naked eye on hundreds of worlds. People looked up at their suns and saw them shining less brightly than before. The Galactic Council held emergency meetings. Scientists from every major species tried to explain what was happening. The Zelithian Empire's best physicists had no answers. The ancient crystalline collective, who had studied stars for millions of years, had never seen anything like it. Helen worked around the clock, analyzing data from across the galaxy. The pattern was becoming clearer. The dimming wasn't random. It was spreading along specific routes, following the paths that human ships had taken over the past 50 years. It's like the universe is remembering, she told her team. Every place humans have been, every star we visited, they're all dimming together. But why? Dr. Brown asked. What does Jake Morrison's execution have to do with stellar physics? Helen didn't have an answer, but she was starting to suspect that the answer wasn't in physics at all. It was in something much bigger. On the third day, She got a call from Captain Torres, one of Jake's old friends. Rick was commanding a human fleet that had gathered near Nexus Prime. They were demanding justice for Jake's execution. Dr. Carter, you need to see this, Rick said. We're getting reports from across the galaxy. The star dimming is accelerating. Helen pulled up the latest data. Rick was right. What had started as a 2% decrease was now 10%. Some stars were dimming by 15%. The effect was getting stronger. There's something else, Rick continued. The aliens are starting to panic. Their homeworlds are experiencing climate problems. Crops are failing. Some species are talking about evacuating their planets. Rick, this is getting out of hand. If the stars keep dimming at this rate, entire civilizations could collapse. Maybe that's the point, Rick said grimly. Maybe the universe is tired of watching innocent people die. Helen thought about Jake Morrison, the quiet cargo captain, who had been murdered for a crime he didn't commit. She thought about the injustice of his trial, the way the aliens had refused to listen to his defense. Rick, I need to ask you something. Do you think Jake was special somehow, different from other humans? Jake was a good man, Rick replied, but he wasn't special. He was just ordinary. That's what made his death so wrong. They killed an innocent man for political reasons. Helen nodded. That was exactly what she had been thinking. Jake Morrison wasn't a hero or a leader. He was just a regular person who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. And maybe that was why the universe was responding so strongly. The stars were dimming in protest. Not because Jake was important, but because his death represented something larger. It represented the injustice that humans faced in a galaxy that saw them as lesser beings. As Helen watched the star charts update, she realized something incredible was happening. The universe itself was taking humanity's side. The stars were bearing witness to the wrong that had been done, and they were not going to let it be forgotten. On distant worlds, alien children pointed at their dimming suns and asked their parents why the light was fading. Ancient alien cultures that worshipped the stars declared it an omen of great change. Even the mysterious energy beings of the Void Nebula, who had been silent for centuries, sent messages across the galaxy. The message was simple. We are watching. We remember. Justice will come. Helen looked out at the stars visible from her office window. They were dimmer now, but somehow they seemed more alive than ever before. They were no longer just balls of burning gas in space. They were witnesses, judges, and protectors, and they were on humanity's side. Krexa had been a security investigator for 30 years. He had seen every kind of crime imaginable on Nexus Prime, but something about the Morrison case bothered him. The evidence was too perfect, too clean. In his experience, real crimes were messy and confusing. This one felt staged. The man theory investigator sat in his office, studying the Morrison file for the 100th time. Outside his window, he could see the dim stars in the night sky. The stellar phenomenon had the entire galaxy scared, and his superiors wanted him to focus on the crisis. But Krexa couldn't let go of the human's case. He pulled up the security footage again. There was Jake Morrison entering Ambassador Velter's office at exactly 1500 hours. The timestamp was clear, the image was sharp, but something nagged at Krexa's mind. His assistant, Yelena, knocked on the door. Investigator, the High Judge wants to see you. Tell him I'm busy. He says it's about the Morrison investigation. He wants you to close the file officially. Krexa's 6 eyes narrowed. Why the rush? The human is already dead. I don't know, sir, but he seemed very insistent. After Yelena left, Krexa made a decision. Instead of closing the file, he was going to dig deeper. Something was wrong. He was going to find out what. He started with a murder weapon. It was a ceremonial Zealothian blade, the kind used in ancient rituals. The prosecution had claimed that Morrison had stolen it from a museum display, but when Krexa checked the museum records, he found something interesting. The blade had been checked out 3 days before the murder, not by Morrison, but by someone with diplomatic access. The signature on the checkout form was blurred, but Krexa could make out part of it. It looked like Zolkar. Krexa's hearts began beating faster. Zolkar was Velter's assistant, the one who had found the body. Why would he need a ceremonial blade? The investigator decided to interview Zolkar again. He found the Zealothian in his temporary office, packing up his dead superior's belongings. I'm sorry to bother you, Krexa said, but I have a few more questions about the night Ambassador Velter died. Zolkar looked nervous. I thought the case was closed. The human was executed 3 days ago, just tying up loose ends. Can you tell me again what time you found the ambassador's body? Around 15:30 hours. I came to deliver some documents and found him on the floor. Crexa made notes. And you didn't see Captain Morrison leaving the office? No, I told you before. The human must have left through the back entrance. What back entrance? Zolkar's pale green skin turned even paler. I mean, the main entrance. He must have left before I arrived. But the security logs show that Morrison was in the office when you found the body. How do you explain that? I don't know. Maybe the logs are wrong. Crexa studied Zolkar carefully. The Zealothian was sweating, and his hands were shaking. Can you show me exactly where you found Ambassador Velter? Reluctantly, Zolkar led him to the ambassador's former office. The room had been cleaned, but Crexa's trained eyes could still see traces of the crime scene. He was here, Zolkar said, pointing to a spot near the desk, face down, with the knife in his back. Interesting, Crexa said, because the crime scene photos show him on his back, with the knife in his chest. Zolkar's eyes went wide. I must have remembered wrong. It was very traumatic. I'm sure it was. Crexa pretended to make more notes. One last question. The ceremonial blade that killed the ambassador. Do you know where Morrison got it? He must have stolen it from somewhere. From the museum? Because the records show that someone with diplomatic access checked it out. 3 days before the murder, Zolkar was backing toward the door. I don't know anything about that. The signature on the checkout form looks like yours. That's impossible. I would never. What? Never kill your own superior? Zolkar made a run for it. He sprinted toward the exit, but Crexa was faster. The Manthari investigator tackled him in the hallway, and they both crashed to the floor. Help, help, Zolkar screamed. The investigator has gone crazy, but when the security guards arrived, Crexa was ready for them. He had Zolkar pinned to the ground and was recording everything with his official investigation device. Zolkar of the Zealothian Diplomatic Corps, Crexa announced loudly. You are under arrest for the murder of Ambassador Velter. This is insane, Zolkar protested. I didn't kill anyone. It was the human. Then explain how you knew details about the crime scene that weren't in any official report. Explain why you checked out the murder weapon 3 days early. Explain why you lied about finding the body. More guards arrived. Along with several other diplomats, word spread quickly through Nexus Prime. The Manthari investigator had reopened the Morrison case and arrested a Zealothian official. Within hours, Crexa was in front of High Judge Murdoch, presenting his evidence. The judge looked furious. Investigator Crexa, you are overstepping your authority. The Morrison case is closed. With respect, Your Honor, I believe we executed an innocent human. The real killer is Zolkar. That's absurd. Zolkar is a respected member of the diplomatic corps. So was Ambassador Velter, and someone still murdered him. Crexa presented his evidence piece by piece. The museum checkout record with Zolkar's signature, the contradictions in his testimony, the fact that he knew details about the crime, scene that had never been made public. This proves nothing, Murdoch said. Circumstantial evidence at best. Then let's search Zolkar's quarters. If he's innocent, he has nothing to hide. The judge clearly didn't want to authorize the search, but too many people were watching now. News of the arrest had spread across the galaxy. If he refused to investigate, it would look like a cover-up. The search of Zolkar's quarters revealed damning evidence. Hidden in a secret compartment were recordings of Zolkar talking to conspirators on his homeworld. They were planning to frame humans for the ambassador's murder to justify harsh restrictions on human expansion. Velter was going to give the humans full membership in the Galactic Council, Zolkar said in one recording. He was betraying our species for those primitives. We can't let that happen. There were also financial records showing large payments from anti-human groups. On several Zealothian worlds, Zolkar had been paid to kill his own superior and blame it on humanity. When confronted with this evidence, Zolkar finally confessed. He broke down in tears, admitting that he had murdered Ambassador Velter and planted evidence to frame Jake Morrison. We were scared, he sobbed. Humans are expanding, to fast, becoming too powerful. We thought if we could discredit them, make them look dangerous, the council would restrict their movements. So you murdered an innocent diplomat and executed an innocent human? Crexa asked. It was supposed to work perfectly. No one would have questioned it. But then the stars started dimming and everyone got scared. The confession sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Jake Morrison had been innocent all along. He had died for a crime he didn't commit, murdered by aliens who were afraid of human progress. Emma Morrison, who had been waiting on Nexus Prime for weeks, finally got the news she had been praying for. Her brother's name was cleared, but it was too late to save his life. At least now everyone knows the truth. She told Captain Torres, Jake died innocent. The question is, what happens now? Torres replied, the aliens executed an innocent man. There has to be consequences across the galaxy. The news spread quickly. Humans were outraged. Many alien species were ashamed. The Galactic Council faced its worst crisis in centuries, and through it all, the stars kept dimming. The phenomenon had now affected nearly half the galaxy. Worlds were experiencing crop failures, climate disasters, and energy shortages. Entire civilizations were on the verge of collapse. Dr. Helen Carter, still monitoring the stellar data from Luna, made another disturbing discovery. The dimming wasn't random anymore. It was forming patterns, like the stars were trying to communicate something. It's like they're writing a message, she told her team. The dim stars are forming symbols across the galaxy. What kind of symbols? Dr. Brown asked. Helen enhanced the star chart on her computer. Look at this. If you connect the dim stars in the Orion sector, they form the constellation that humans call the scales of justice. And over here, Dr. Chen pointed to another section. The stars are forming what looks like a human figure with arms outstretched. Helen felt a chill. The universe is mourning Jake Morrison. The stars are creating a memorial for him across the entire galaxy. As the truth about Jake's innocence spread, alien leaders began to panic. The stellar dimming was getting worse, not better. Whatever force was controlling the stars, it wasn't satisfied with just revealing the truth. It wanted justice, and justice, it seemed, was going to come from the stars themselves. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered on Nexus Prime. As their home stars continued to dim, some species were already evacuating their planets as temperatures dropped and crops failed. High Judge Murdoch stood before the assembly, looking older than his 800 years. The revelation of Jake Morrison's innocence had shaken the very foundations of galactic law. Now he faced the most difficult decision of his career. Fellow beings, he began, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. We gather today in the shadow of a great injustice. An innocent human was executed based on false evidence and lies. The crowd murmured angrily. Some called for immediate action. Others demanded that humans be compensated for their loss. But everyone knew that words alone wouldn't stop the stellar crisis. In the human section, Emma Morrison sat with Captain Torres and the other human representatives. She had been waiting 3 weeks for this moment, but now that it was here, she felt empty inside. Nothing could bring Jake back. Ambassador Lisa Clark stood up to address the council. Honored representatives, humanity appreciates that the truth has finally come to light. But our brother Jake Morrison is still dead. Justice demands more than just words. What do you want from us? Asked Speaker Velka of the Andorian Federation. We cannot undo what has been done. You can ensure it never happens again. Clark replied. You can hold the conspirators accountable. You can give humanity the full membership that Ambassador Velter died trying to secure for us. And if we do all of this, will the stars return to normal? This question came from Regent Thullis of the Crystal Collective. His homeworld was experiencing massive climate shifts. As their twin suns dimmed, we don't know, Dr. Helen Carter said, standing up in the Scientific Observer section. The stellar phenomenon appears to be beyond our understanding or control. It's not something humans are doing deliberately. Then how do we stop it? Demanded General Court of the Zealotian Empire. Half the galaxy is on the verge of collapse. High Judge Murdoch raised his hand for silence. The council has reviewed Investigator Krexa evidence. Zolkar and his conspirators will face trial for murder and treason. But first, we must address the broader injustice. He activated a holographic display showing Jake Morrison's image. Captain Jake Morrison was wrongfully convicted and executed. This council bears responsibility for that failure of justice. Murdoch's voice grew stronger. Therefore, by unanimous vote of the Emergency Tribunal, this council hereby declares Jake Morrison innocent of all charges. His execution is ruled unlawful and unjust. The announcement brought scattered applause. But everyone knew it wasn't enough. Outside the council chambers, the dim stars continued their silent protest. Furthermore, Murdoch continued, the Galactic Council formally apologizes to humanity for this grievous error. As Ambassador Velter had planned, humans are hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and protections thereof. This brought louder applause, especially from the human section. Emma Morrison felt tears in her eyes. Jake would have been proud to see this moment, but the stars remained dim. Captain Torres stood up. Your Honor, humanity accepts the Council's apology and membership, but the universe itself seems to be demanding something more. What more can we do? Murdoch asked. We've admitted our mistake, granted your species full rights, and promised to prosecute the real criminals. Maybe the universe wants to see real consequences, Torres suggested, not just for the conspirators, but for the system that allowed an innocent man to be railroaded. Dr. Helen Carter was monitoring her portable star charts during the proceedings. Suddenly, she noticed something new. Excuse me, she called out. Something's happening to the stellar patterns. She projected her data for everyone to see. The dim stars were moving, not physically, but in their brightness patterns. They were creating new formations across the galaxy. Look at this, Helen said, pointing to a section of space. The stars are forming what looks like a human hand, reaching out toward the Zealothian homeworld. In another sector, the dim stars had arranged themselves into what clearly resembled scales, the universal symbol of justice, and in the center of the galaxy, the pattern looked unmistakably like a memorial stone. The universe is speaking to us, Helen whispered. It's showing us what it wants. High Judge Murdoch stared at the display. In his long life, he had seen many strange things, but nothing like this. What is it trying to tell us? I think it wants Jake Morrison to be remembered, Emma Morrison said, standing up, not just as a victim, but as a symbol of justice. The stars are creating a memorial for him across the entire galaxy. And maybe, Captain Torres added, it wants us to learn from his death, to make sure this kind of injustice never happens again. Murdoch nodded slowly. Then that is what we shall do. He turned to address the full assembly. Let it be recorded that from this day forward, no sentient being may be executed without a full and fair trial, with adequate time for defense and the right to appeal. Let Jake Morrison's death serve as a reminder of what happens when justice fails. The council voted unanimously to adopt the new laws. They also voted to erect a monument to Jake Morrison on Nexus Prime and to establish the Morrison Foundation for Galactic Justice. But still, the stars remained dim. It wasn't until 3 days later that the change began. Emma Morrison was visiting the newly constructed memorial to her brother when she noticed it. Sol, Earth's sun, was getting brighter. Dr. Helen Carter confirmed it from her observatory. Sol's luminosity is returning to normal. She reported to the council. It's happening slowly, but definitely increasing. Over the next few hours, the brightening spread to Alpha Centauri, then to the other stars in human space, like a wave of light moving across the galaxy. The stars began to shine normally again, but they didn't stop at normal. They kept getting brighter. Within a week, every star that had dimmed was now shining more brilliantly than ever before. The galaxy was bathed in golden light. Worlds that had been dying were suddenly experiencing a renaissance of warmth and energy. Scientists across the galaxy struggled to explain it. Dr. Helen Carter called it the Great Brightening. Ancient alien cultures declared it a sign of cosmic approval. Children on 100 worlds pointed at the brilliant stars and laughed with joy. On Nexus Prime, Emma Morrison stood before her brother's memorial. The monument was simple, a black stone with Jake's name and the words "He died innocent, but not forgotten." The stars remember, Jake, she whispered. They'll never forget what you did for us. Captain Torres joined her at the memorial. The aliens are calling it a miracle, he said, but I think it's something else. What? Justice. Real justice, not the kind that comes from courts and judges, but the kind that comes from the universe itself. Emma nodded. She thought about her brother's last words, how he had said humanity would show the galaxy what justice looked like. In a way, he had been right. His death had taught the entire galaxy a lesson about fairness and truth. Years later, when spacers of every species told stories around their campfires, they always mentioned Jake Morrison, the human who died innocent, and whose death made the stars themselves weep. They said the stars had mourned for him, and then celebrated when justice was finally done. Children learned about him in school. Diplomats invoked his name when negotiating treaties. Judges remembered his case when making difficult decisions. Jake Morrison, the simple cargo hauler, had become the most famous human in galactic history, and on clear nights, when the stars shone their brightest, people would look up and remember. They would remember that the universe had a conscience, that justice mattered, and that sometimes the stars themselves would step in to make things right. Emma Morrison lived to be 93 years old. She became Earth's most respected ambassador and helped dozens of species join the Galactic Council. But she never forgot the brother who had started it all, the man whose innocent death had changed the galaxy forever. When she finally passed away peacefully in her sleep, the stars flickered once in her honor, just once, but people across the galaxy saw it and knew what it meant. The Morrison family was finally together again, and somewhere among the stars, justice was eternal. On Jake Morrison's memorial, someone had added a line years after his death. It read, "The stars remember everything, and they never forget." And in the depths of space, the stars continued to shine brightly, keeping their promise to a dead man who had believed in something better. They were the eternal guardians of justice, the cosmic witnesses to truth, and the undying light of hope. For all who sought what was right, the galaxy had learned its lesson well. Justice was not just a concept for courts and governments. It was a force of nature, as fundamental as gravity or light. And when justice was denied, even the stars would weep. But when justice was restored, they would shine forever.